Have you ever thought that achieving happiness is a process? Did you know that this process is achievable, and that you can obtain happiness through practical steps, which are actually very simple? Join us to explore them in this video. Happiness is one of the most precious commodities for human beings. Curiously, however, it is not a tangible good, like many of the best components of life. It would be very difficult to come up with a universal concept of happiness, as no two people are alike. Rather than being subjective, I would go so far as to say that it is a primary concept, like freedom, justice or injustice, good or evil. We know when they are there or not, even if we cannot define them. And other people's definitions are not that useful either. What counts is our own experience. Happiness is often confused with momentary or transient states, such as joy, pleasure, physical well-being, satisfaction of vital needs, or as the balance between our expectations and experiences throughout life. It seems to me that people find it difficult to understand happiness precisely because it is subjective and personal, because pleasant and unpleasant emotional states fluctuate constantly and, to a large extent, because social expectations, what others, not us, expect of it, are usually unrealistic. It would be extremely rare for someone to be born with everything going for them or in entirely good circumstances. That is why happiness has to be earned, to be conquered in one way or another, as well as to be maintained. And attaining happiness is undoubtedly one of the purposes of existence, if not the main one. We all know that there are few certain things in life, this period in which good and bad things follow each other unpredictably, and in which to be well it is necessary to balance our capacities with our limits. Of course, everyone must have his or her own concept of what happiness is, because the ego, which is basically built on other people's ideas or perceptions, often forms a major impediment to happiness. The concept of happiness is different for everyone. It is necessary to observe oneself to perceive, with the help of both the heart and the brain, whether we have it or not, in our most intimate areas. However, in practical terms, the first and foremost thing to realize is that happiness is a journey, rather than a destination, as it extends over time. Here it is important to realize that, although there are states of human life, such as joy or health, which may resemble or give an idea of what happiness is, they are not necessarily so. If we review or recapitulate periods of our life, with all its lights and shadows, it will be easier to realize how happy we have been. Looking back carefully, we will find that in spite of everything there have always been things going well, that every day at least something good has happened that we had not considered. Another very important aspect is to be aware that what happens in the mind is fundamental. As wise people throughout the ages, such as Lao Tzu, Buddha, Solomon, and Marcus Aurelius, have said, it is our conceptions or thoughts that can make our life wonderful or miserable. Watching our thoughts so that they help us to be happy and make our life more enjoyable usually does not require that much effort. When in practice we find it difficult to know our true level of happiness, we have to start by solving or removing what we dislike, identifying its sources, some of which are subtle, not very obvious, or we flatly refuse to accept them. Among the causes of unhappiness is often excessive self-centeredness. Although thinking of oneself is fundamental, and a certain amount of selfishness is healthy, even necessary to preserve our person, leading an exaggeratedly self-focused existence is a distancing factor from happiness. Another common factor of unhappiness is envy, which usually has more imaginary or internal than external causes, such as comparing ourselves with other people, whose existential situation, by the way, is almost always different from what we suppose. The belief that someone else is limiting our possibilities or our own feelings of handicap, which need to be understood and dealt with. Another common factor of unhappiness is often the assumption that something or someone is chasing us. This includes, for example, the belief in sin, which is usually based on beliefs, obsessions, and traumas of people totally unrelated to our reality, as well as the opinion, real or supposed, that others may have of us. On balance, the opinion of others is rarely that important in practice, apart from the fact that we can also have opinions about others, not forgetting that by definition opinions are often biased and subjective. Rationally grounded beliefs must be built up, avoiding swallowing anything that cannot be verified. The best of life often lies beyond the fears we overcome, which, moreover, do not always have a real underlying reason. Other common factors of unhappiness are bad company, the spectrum of which can be very broad and subtle, which can include people close to us, and which often requires a certain amount of courage to recognize. Consider that someone who is unhappy will always try to make those around them unhappy, usually without realizing it. Consider, in the same vein, over-fatigue, over-competition, and the pursuit of superficial pleasures, or things that others have led us to believe are pleasurable, and which often appear to be a substitute for true happiness. Just as there are causes of unhappiness and with them things to avoid, it is even more important to focus on the causes of happiness. The first thing is to realize that happiness is possible, and to firmly believe that it is within our reach, because it is. We can begin by recognizing and valuing those things that, in themselves, contribute authentically to our happiness, which are usually the simplest, yet most valuable things in our existence, such as, for example, health, the wonder of life as a phenomenon and its mysteries. Other simple and fundamental factors that often lead to a fuller existence are a balanced existence, enthusiasm, affection, genuine interpersonal relationships, constructive work, intellectual as well as physical activity, and the appropriate use of our energy. It is difficult to say whether or not life has meaning beyond itself, but everyone can find one or more purposes and interests for it. When one purpose is fulfilled, it is almost always possible to formulate others, and more when these are exhausted. It is a divine power. People who dare to achieve things are usually happier. You have to dare to live. Interests that go beyond our own person or immediate circumstances are also important factors, such as science, art, literature, concern for the common or social good, nature, or any other field that allows us to get out of ourselves to develop a genuine curiosity for the world, objective and generous. Realize that all of the above, sooner or later, is a source of satisfaction, which raises our level of well-being, forming part of the journey to happiness. Last but not least, the most important thing to be happy is self-acceptance, which leads to authentic love of our person. Count the many gifts you have as a human being, as a participant in this life. Proclaim your individuality and move on. Happiness is really worth it. If you liked this video, comment, share, suggest, read the video description, which might have a gift for you. Give us a like and or buy us a coffee. We'd really appreciate it. See you in the next video.